Right, today we're going to talk about the role of trade unions. They're syndicati in Italian. First of all, what is a trade union? A trade union is an organisation which represents the interests of the workers, so towards the employers. Obviously the employer has the opposite interests as the employee. The employer wants to spend less money on wages to be more competitive, or give less holiday for more productivity, or not spend too much on health and safety. The employee wants the opposite, wants high wages, more holiday, better safety, etc. And there's trade unions to represent them. The trade unions will take a fee for each member, so hundreds and maybe thousands of members will pay, so then they can pay for offices and computers and a lawyer, etc. And then they'll do the representing. What do they actually do when they represent? Well, the primary task must always be the negotiation of pay and conditions for the members. So when every year there's a negotiation for the contract, a new contract, and how much money it'll be because there's inflation or something, the unions will go and do their best to negotiate a high increase as possible, and the employer as low as possible. A little bit about the history of unions. Originally, well, if we go right back to feudal times, we didn't even get wages. We were just owned by the lord and just given a bit of land, and we couldn't change employer. And then you've got the industrial age where you get wages. There were no unions at the beginning, and the employer could do what he liked with us. He had a lot of power. He had the living, the money that everybody lived on, so he had a lot of power. He could really, if anybody tried to, challenge him and want more money or whatever, he could just sack them and punish them in some way, use some means against them. So people banded together, they came together in an act of solidarity and resisted together and formed unions and had strikes, that's scioperi, for higher wages and better conditions. So the unions were born out of the misery and the abuse of the workers to try to get better conditions and pay. And that's what they do, principally. But they also defend the rights and the jobs of people. So when the employer wants to reduce the number of employees and wants to sack workers, or maybe even just substitute workers with robots or automation, the unions there are there to resist that and to try to give the opposite point of view and explain why they shouldn't do that. And employees' rights, people need breaks, maybe they want a place for a coffee, a little room where they can relax and have a coffee, a fridge to put their lunch or something, whatever. They're there for the rights of the workers. So they'll be interested in that. Improving working conditions, got hours of work, health, safety policies. Yeah, safety policies. Think of the school, we need a fire exit, so the unions will be interested in that. Maybe an alarm system for fire. The doors, check the doors open outwards and not inwards, which is safer. They're interested in keeping the workers safe and healthy. the temperature in winter. It can't be too cold. In summer, maybe we need fans and air conditioners, etc. And then better hours of work. So they try to improve the hours of work, more holidays, more breaks. Encouraging more worker participation. So any big decision made by a company, if a company wants to merge with another company, they'll want to have their say. They want to be included in the decision. They'll want to participate. In some countries, the union representatives sit in the board meetings and have a vote, because any decision they make is in the interests of the employees too. And of course this will encourage the employees to feel part of the company, to have an interest that the company does well, and maybe to motivate in that way, so they work hard because they feel part ownership of the company. They feel they have the same objectives, which is to do well, if they're making the decisions, if they're involved in the decisions. So also, when there's problems, maybe someone's been dismissed because they didn't work hard enough, or they didn't come to work, or whatever, or they were dangerous, or they're taking industrial action, the unions will provide a lawyer, or will negotiate with the employer. The unions normally know the law, the employment law, very well. They know contracts very well, and they'll be able to defend using the existing laws in a capable way. They'll have a lot of experience too. So they're there also for developing skills and training. They're interested in the development of their members, the well-being, because they're interested in the interests. They've got the interests of their workers or their members. And that one of the interests is to progress and to develop, to do well. So maybe courses like English courses, whatever. Providing social amenities for members. Remember, the unions came from solidarity to fight abuses. So they're only as strong as the relationships. And if they've got social amenities, clubs, places to dance, and families can mix, and everybody's very strong community, that means they're more able to resist any abuse, or they're more able to really react to any decision made by the employer. So they want to build a strong community, which means social amenities, so people can get to know each other on a social level and create empathy and be strong as a community. They also influence government policy and employment legislation. Remember that in England, and I think also in Italy, in England, the Labour Party, which is from the left, was born from the unions, and they're the biggest or the second biggest parties at different times in England. And it was started by the unions. Originally, the unions were there to try to change the conditions for their members by resisting the employer. Then they created a political party so they could change, they could become the government, influence the government with these links, and the government make the rules. So it's probably the best way to change conditions for the workers is to be the government. And they've got a very strong link with the Labour Party. They've got a vote at their annual meeting, so on any proposals. They make big contributions, financial contributions to the party. They help choose the leader of the party, so they've got a vote on the leader of the party, they've got a big vote on the leader. So they've got a very strong influence on any Labour government, and in that way they influence government policy. And then, of course, if it's not a Labour government, they still have an opposition in Parliament which they have a big influence over and which will be looking after their interests.